Have you been thinking about buying an investment property or maybe just your first home? You're worried about all the information in the media at the moment about an impending property crash and quite a massive property crash. Maybe you're thinking of waiting for that crash to come so you can get yourself some bargains and not buy property at the top end of the market and buy a bit cheaper. Um, well, if you're worried about that, I'm a bit worried for you that you might be waiting for a crash that might not actually come in regards to you buying investment property or your own home, depending what you're looking at. Now, and you probably end up paying more money anyway. So if that's intriguing to you, just keep listening and I'll share with you in this video today with the things at the moment about the Australian property market that the media is not telling you. So this is the things that all the smart people out there, all the investors, people who are into investing in property are knowing these things because they do the work, they do their research. But the media is not necessarily telling you because it's not a story that sells. Anyway, hi, I'm Michael Scarbossa. I'm a personal finance enthusiast and I have a long career in construction in the railway industry. My goal is to make money simple for you by giving you simple, actionable steps and strategies to be able to grow your hard earned money and hopefully shortcut your path to retirement. So I created this channel, Save and Invest and Grow Your Money, to share with what I have learned over the last 20 plus years and continue to learn to achieve financial strength for me and my family and to create more choices for me and my family. Now, I just want to make sure that you do know that I'm not a financial advisor. Everything that I share here on this channel is stuff that I've learned and continue to learn to help you along your journey so you can ask the right questions and be more informed around how you might want to start managing your own money. Now, also, and I'll leave it in the comments below this video, a link to my website, michaelscarbossa.com. I have there for you a free PDF, and it's got a brief plan in there about the steps that I took to go from having no savings to buying my first investment property. So I'll leave that link for you. Hopefully you can go and grab a hold of that. So I guess today, getting in today's video, and just before I do, big yippee to all you Cowboys fans out there. Cowboys, there we go, wrong side. I'm a avid Cowboys supporter here in Australia in the NRL, Cowboys Rugby League side. They had an awesome victory last night in extra time and golden point to go through to one game off the grand final. So I'm pretty excited about that. So all you Cowboys fans out there, what a great time to be a Cowboys fan. Anyway, just to lighten the mood, but I'll get into it today. And you probably agree with me of what I said about the media. You're hearing plenty in the media at the moment that inflation's up. Obviously, interest rates are going up. As a result of that, there's a massive beat up around the property market. There's headlines out there that we're heading for the biggest crash ever, 20, 30%. Some really scary numbers being thrown around, that there is a big property crash on the way. Now, yes, it's true. Inflation is up, and it has been going up, but starting to peter out a little bit by the looks of things. Interest rates have been going up, so the Royal Bank of Australia has been hiking up those rates, and it's not too dissimilar to the rest of the Western world, trying to get that inflation under control, which is one of the levers that they pulled to do that. But there is plenty about the Australian property market, other dynamic factors in there that the media is not telling us. So some of that talk around, big property crash, well, an element that might be true, but that's if you're intending to buy a high-end home in a city, Sydney, Melbourne, even Brisbane, on the Sydney Harbour. You're going to spend $3 or $4 million on a house. Yeah, well, some of those probably are going to come off 20 to 30%. But we're talking about the top end of the market for high net worth individuals, not the bulk of us who we're looking to buy our first property or we just live in the suburbs. Husband, wife, 2 kids, 2 dogs, whatever we have. Stock standard housing in that sort of mid-tier to lower end of the market. That's a bit of a different story. This is what the media is not talking to you about. So just around this, I've read, I'm very, very interested in this because I invest in property. I have a number of investment properties myself. Over the last few months, or I continue to do this anyway, but particularly over the last few months, I've read a lot of reports. I've watched a lot of videos around property analysts about their views of what's going on in the market. These are people who do, research is their full-time job, or they have departments that do this research, not just individuals, I mean departments. They get into all sorts of numbers and statistical analysis and all types of stuff, and looking what's happened historically in the property market and the economy, going back to other big um, impacts on the economy, like world wars and the Spanish flu back in the 1920s and all this sort of stuff. So all of these big um, economical impacts that we have over time, like we've just had COVID, they all follow similar patterns. So those patterns leave clues about what those analysts think the future might look like. So and those clues are usually pretty consistent. So with that, I've been through a lot of these reports, a lot of these videos. They're flush with lots of numbers, lots of graphs, lots of jargon around property and the economy and all the macroeconomic factors that go into driving it. Sometimes this can be a little difficult to decipher, a little bit much to understand. So what I thought I would do here today is just share a simple slide for you, just a really simple slide, just talking about those really macro level elements of the economy, how that's impacting property, the way you should think about it and not listen to the media, and maybe do some of your own research around that. So what I'll do is I'll just share that slide now, because it simplifies things in an easy, digestible way to really get you thinking about what's really going on in the Australian property market. So the first thing I'm going to start on, just while I share this slide, is the big thing of the day, and that is inflation. Okay. So with inflation, we've just been through COVID. We've been through, unprecedented for pretty much all of us, all of our lives, experiencing massive lockdowns, people weren't leaving their homes, people weren't buying stuff. So we had all these international lockdowns. Of course, then what did the governments do to stimulate the economy, to get things going again as people were sort of in lockdown and even coming out of lockdowns? They printed plenty of money. They've given us all cash. We know all the people who are home, not at work, but getting the payments from the government. So, yep, there's a lot of cash flowing around out there. So what does that do when people have cash? Well, they spend it. Okay, so what do they spend it on? Stuff. All right. So when you spend it on stuff, where does that stuff come from? Overseas. All the materials, everything, all around the globe. Okay. Now, what has happened is all of a sudden, all this extra stuff is being bought. You've got all these lockdowns in different countries around the world, people not going to work, supply chains are being disrupted, productivity is being low in these supply chains. So you've got people buying stuff, productivity and supply chains have gone down. That means the supply and demand, there's massive demand and not much supply. So of course, what happens? Prices go up. And that's what we get. That's what we get. We get inflation. That's how it happens. Now, it's not just that. There's been a few other things here in Australia that have happened on our doorstep as well. We've had a lot of floods in this last year. A lot of those floods have affected our farmland. So, we're seeing those immediate factors in our supermarkets as well. We've all seen the news clips of lettuces around $11. Well, they must have searched hard to find that, because lettuce has been more expensive, but $11, that's getting a bit rich, isn't it? Anyway, so you can just see that there's been a lot of factors that has impacted and driven up that inflation. Now, although there has been a lot of inflation, things have actually been starting to recover around a lot of factors for about 6 months now. So for instance, timber or lumber futures. Okay, so this is the pricing indexes around timber, which is one of those key building materials for houses, so for the property market. Okay, so those futures have been coming out, those prices have been coming down since the start of the year. They're actually almost half than what they were at the start of the year. So you can see now inflation is, those elements behind the inflation, things are starting to turn, things are coming down. We can see, oil and gas prices are coming down. Now, the bows are starting to come down a little bit. So things are starting to turn a little bit back to normal. But so and you can see why. And one of the biggest levers the Royal Bank of Australia has around inflation is to pull the lever on interest rates. So we're going to rise interest rates So you've got less disposable money to spend because your mortgage is going up if you're not on a fixed mortgage, but that will catch up when your fixed mortgage runs out. And business rates and a whole lot of other things to slow down our spending to curb that inflation. So that's what's going on there. Now, inflation is one of those things, right? It decreases the future value of our money, but remembering that also decreases the future value of our debts as well. So now, with inflation, property investment is a great hedge against inflation. And the reason being is because with inflation, the price of everything goes up. That includes the price of property. So if you're owning it, that's a great thing because that property prices are going up. Also, rents are going up, but I'll talk more about that in a moment. So as a property investor owning property, value of property going up, rents going up, that's a good thing. That's a great thing, and it usually goes up in a greater magnitude to what the inflation is actually going up in. So you can see there on my slide, inflation. Okay, sounds bad, but as a property investor investing in property, it's actually not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. So I've got myself a nice big green happy face. You can see there. Okay, so just moving on into interest rates. So I've just spoken a little bit about interest rates and why interest rates are going up. Um, the historically interest rates have been very, very low. We've been near 0%. That's sort of unprecedented. So if you've been living in a life with blinkers on and dark sunglasses and thinking, oh, I love this new world of zero interest rates and never thought it was ever going to return, then sorry, that's starting to happen now. So interest rates are going up, but it's not necessarily okay. It's a bad thing because it's going to cost you more, right? If you've got a home loan, if you've got property loans, interest rates going up is going to cost you more. But actually, they're returning more to historical levels anyway. So it's not like they're going absolutely through the roof like in the 80s where it went double digit. And that was pretty brutal for a lot of people back then. Who owned property and were in business and had loans. So I don't see it going there. Everything that I'm reading and seeing around interest rates, it's rather interesting. The RBA, the major banks, they're pretty good at trying to have a guess, but they don't have a crystal ball. They don't know what's going on. So um, it's one of those things. Well, we don't really know, right? But at the moment, so just to be an example of that. So back in January of this year, in 2022, the RBA was predicting that the cash rate, the Bank of the Royal Bank of Australia base rate was going to top out at about 1.5% to mid to late next year. So mid to late 2023, they were predicting about 1.5% in January of this year. Now go forward to about March of this year. I went, oh no, that's not quite right. It actually looks like it's going to be more about 3%. We're like, well, that's a pretty big change. It's almost double in a couple of months, right? So do they really have their handle on the pulse? I'm not so sure. All right, fast forward to June. They were like going, oh dear, we're in a spot of bother here. Looks like, mid to late next year, the base rate's going to be up around 4%. It's starting to look a bit dire. It's going to hurt a lot of people. Now we come forward to August, things are starting to tail off a bit already, and the RBA's turning around and saying, okay, well, it looks like maybe it might be back down to around 3.25%, 3.35%. So, and that seems to be where a lot of analysts are landing at the moment. Things are starting to tail off a bit, and it looks like it's probably going to be around 3.35 to 3.5% in about 6 to 9 months. But hey, look at the last 6 months. We don't really know where that's going to go. So you've just got to be a bit careful about that. Make sure that if you can, put some cash away and have some reserves there just in case. So that's it on interest rates. Now getting a bit more into the housing market, away from those macroeconomic things. So housing affordability in Australia. So in Australia, there's really markets within markets. A lot of the big crash rhetoric you hear is really centered on the higher market of Sydney and Melbourne, not so much anywhere else, to a degree, probably in Brisbane as well, but Brisbane's still holding fairly solidly. But if you have a look at housing affordability at the moment, so just quickly doing around the houses of the major capital cities of what I've learned, Perth and Darwin at the moment has got really high affordability. It's actually cheaper to buy property in Perth and Darwin at the moment than it is to rent it. So, and I'm talking about those sort of mid to low ends of the market. Your general, 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, suburban type homes. This is what I'm talking about. Okay. Um, So then if you go and have a look at, Brisbane, Adelaide, Canberra, the housing affordability is moderate. Yeah, it's more expensive to buy a house than rent, but it's not off the charts. And it's probably, if you look in the right places and buy in the right places, probably still not, too bad of an area to invest in. Whereas Perth and Darwin, I think there's going to be some great opportunities in the short term to invest in Perth and Darwin. But Brisbane, Adelaide, Canberra, there are still good opportunities around. Okay. And then if you go to Sydney and Melbourne, well, the affordability in Sydney and Melbourne is, I would call that low at the moment, particularly, the top end of the market. And just in general, Sydney and Melbourne are more expensive markets to be in. They're probably going to have a lot more pressure on their markets, particularly in that mid-tier towards below as well. Still, the low's still holding at the moment in those markets. But yeah, I think you're probably brave to be buying in Melbourne and Sydney right now as a property investor. But hey. Um, so just talking about that, what I said, where the media is sensationalizing and grabbing onto is that sort of top 25% of the markets in Sydney and Melbourne, those harbourside views, $3 or $4 million properties who are taking a bit of a hit because those people are like, okay, I'm not going to put my property on the market now, and only those who really need to sell are wanting to sell, and people are a little bit pessimistic about spending their money because of interest rates, and that's how that all works out. But towards the bottom of the market, so you see that the top 25% is definitely tailing off. In the middle, it's sort of just tailing off a little bit, depending what market you're in. Some of those markets, it's still sort of going up a bit or plateauing. But surely, but the lower end of the market, particularly in some markets, particularly in Perth, particularly in Darwin, some areas of sort of Adelaide and Brisbane, it's the market's still rising. The market is actually still rising, and the bottom end of the market is stable. So this is great news for investors with strength in the bottom end of the market, and rents are rising. So I've got a happy face on that for property investors. Okay, so moving on, residential supply. Okay, well, residential supply in Australia, it's critically undersupplied, absolutely critically undersupplied, and it's declining. Okay, so it means that the problem's getting worse. So particularly through COVID, all the lockdowns, all the supply chain disruptions, what happened? Building approvals went down. Building production has gone down. That's only added to the problem we've got here in Australia. Um, and the weather as well hasn't helped things here as well. That's slowed down building production as well. When it comes to renting, across most cities, across pretty much most areas of Australia at the moment, rental vacancies are historical lows. I mean, really, really low. We're talking vacancies in most places less than 1%, which means it's rental prices go up when it's vacancy rate is less than 1%, but there's many areas that are down around 0.2%, 0.1%. Houses just aren't available. You hear the stories of people moving into caravan parks. You hear the stories of 30, 40 people turning up to inspect a rental property. That stuff is real. That is really happening at the moment. People are outbidding each other for properties. They just want to get a roof over their heads. One of the key measures around rental property is those properties that maybe aren't so desirable to rent, and normally if you had a choice you probably wouldn't choose that property. So there's a measure around properties on the market for 180 days to rent, so that's quite a long time. That the amount of properties on the market for 180 days to rent now is really, really low. It's so low, it's ridiculous. People are just renting anything to get a roof over their head. So what does that also mean? That means massive pressure on and competition for rents. So rents are going up. We're hearing about it everywhere, and that's a great thing for property investors once again. The other thing that is really piling into residential supply in regards to and particularly residential vacancies is we've got a massive skills demand and issue here in Australia at the moment. Unemployment is really low. Okay, so this is this fifth point here. Unemployment's really low. There's a massive skills demand. You've probably heard it in numerous circles. Builders struggling to get trades, restaurants struggling to get wait staff, hairdressers. I even hear are struggling to get hairdressers. There seems to be a skills shortage everywhere. So, what does the Australian government do when that happens, and particularly after to stimulate the economy after a big interruption like COVID, and this happened after World War II as well? They open the gates to immigration. So immigration goes through the roof. As a matter of fact, back in June of this year, there was 45,000 visa application approvals. Most ever. That's a record in Australia, and that's going to continue for some time yet. We're looking at, we've got massive job vacancies, somewhere in the order of 500,000 job vacancies at the moment here in Australia, and we're looking at immigration of up around 300,000 or 400,000 people here. That is a lot. That's massive. Just to give an indication of what it was like before COVID, that number was around about 200, 220,000. So, of course, when all these people come to Australia, what's going to happen? They need somewhere to live. Walking into a critically undersupplied housing market where there isn't the houses to rent, of course, that's just going to continue to push up house prices. It's going to continue to push up rents. If you're a property investor, that is just music to your ears. Okay, so nice big happy smiley face on that as well. So that's the 5 things I just wanted to touch on today around what's happening in the property market. These are the things that you're not really hearing in the media. The media is not really talking about some of these elements to show that the market actually in that low to mid tier where you should be buying investment property, in my opinion, is still quite strong and still plenty of opportunity there. So, just in summary, with all of those 5 points, when inflation goes up, house prices go up, usually faster than inflation. We're seeing wages go up because there's a skills gap and there's competition for workers. Of course, more money around, rents are going up, house prices are going up, and this is why property investment is such a good hedge against inflation and still is a good thing to get into right now, today. I would encourage you not to wait, do some research, find the right areas to actually invest in the property market. Because at the moment, there's a lot of people are a bit scared, they're hanging back, they're being pessimistic, which means there's good deals for you to pick up right now before everyone realizes it, before the media realizes it, and everyone starts piling in again. Okay, so I hope you found that really useful and informative today. And just on that, if you're looking to invest in property, I encourage you to use the professionals who are currently analysing the markets, who are currently bringing good deals to you, currently finding the best areas to invest for long-term growth. I personally use a couple of property investment companies to help me with my property investment purchases. Feel free to direct message me if you want to find out a bit more about that from me. I'll be happy to connect with you on that. So I hope you found that really informative today. I hope it's opened your eyes to a few things about what's going on at the moment, for you to think a bit differently about property in Australia. Go and do a bit more of your own research, get comfortable with that, and yeah, good luck. Good luck. Go to it. Hop to it. Just one more reminder before I go. Don't forget to click on the link below, michaelscabossa.com. You'll get that free PDF, steps I took to go from zero savings to investing in my first property. And that's it from me. Have a fabulous weekend, or rest of the weekend being Sunday morning, and a great week after that. And yeah, that's enough for me. See you later. Bye for now.